Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. And I heard from some of you that you really liked meeting Daniel. Well, he may not be back for a while because Daniel drinks a lot. And you saw him at a sober moment. But someday if he comes back around and hasn't been drinking a whole lot of moonshine, we'll have him back for a guest shot. Now, in the last 3 months, there's been a series of questions. I should preface this, that this is a video specifically about missing people and related issues. Get a lot of questions about personal locator beacons. What kind to buy? What's the differences? So I tell everybody to start off, go to Amazon, put in personal locator beacons, and read the reviews from the various items. Now, there's several different types. I'm going to go through a few of them because all of you, if you're watching this and you walk into the woods, you ought to be carrying one of these. Just the reality of our world. Now, let me show you a picture. I do not endorse any of these. I do not get paid by anyone. I'm just giving you an education. One popular brand. I don't know anything about it. ACR, another very popular brand. This one was $349. Some of ACR's are waterproof, some are not. Now, about this, you pay the $349. You register it with the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, and you're done. It's yours forever. No monthly fees, no nothing. You carry it with you, you get lost, you activate it, and you wait for search and rescue to find you within 10 feet of where that signal's coming from. It transmits your GPS coordinates through a satellite to National Oceanographic and Atmospheric. It doesn't matter if you're in the water, if you're in the air, they'll come find you. Now, if you go to ACR's website, they have tons of stories there about people who have been saved by their device. It's kind of cool. Another device. This is different. Has the same sort of function. But this is called a spot device. Spot you can hang it on the back of your backpack. You can turn it on and it'll transmit your GPS coordinates every 10 minutes, or I forgot how long exactly, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, to somebody who's monitoring you on their computer. And they can see your travel all day, and all of a sudden if it stops functioning, something happens, they know where you're at. Now that device has a monthly fee. This also allows you limited texting via satellite to people you care about. It will also put out the signal that you're in distress and you're lost and you need help. Monthly fee with this, just for the device, it's $200, but then on top of that, you're paying Spot for a monthly fee, so they got you hooked. It's a cool device if you think you need to communicate with people, or you have a loved one at home that wants to follow you on your hike and watch where you're going. That's cool. I don't use it. I've never used something like this. But I know some really, really big names in the outdoor world that do use it. And I'm not endorsing it. I'm not saying it works. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying. Those are your big choices on personal locator beacons. There's a lot of smaller companies that do just as good a job. And I would go to your local sporting goods store and talk to the people there. Surprisingly, I've gone to several REI stores and they claim to know a lot about the outdoors. I just play stupid and I have them talk to me, and they really know nothing. Most of them know nothing about these devices. And unfortunately, they don't push them hard either. If I was in the outdoor industry and I was outfitting some newbies with backpacks and water filters, etc., I'd say, but before you get all of that, you need to get one of these. And you don't hear that. That's too bad. But It's my little spiel. Everyone should carry one. It's a great gift if you have a son, daughter, niece, nephew that's going in the outdoors. It's a great gift because it'll last a lifetime. They don't expire. Batteries expire, but they don't. Now, get a lot of comments about the letters at the beginning of the segment. And some people are real angry that I even read the letters. They said, hey, just don't even read those stupid letters. Just tell us the missing person stories. You know, if you're saying that, that really isn't the target audience I'm looking for. Why? Because I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to educate you. And part of that education is to really what's happening in the woods around you. It may not happen directly to you, but it's happening around you. If you opened up your eyes, if you are willing to think, if you're willing to be a critical thinker, you're going to see things in the woods many others don't. Best example I can give you, Angie and I have hiked a lot in the woods all over North America, and me, Canada. And Angie would say, you know, Dave, and she was a big hiker before she ever met me. She'd say, you know, I never heard or saw anything in the woods unusual. And I started to teach her that when we get near ponds, creeks, rivers with big sandbars, we're always going to stop and we're going to look for tracks in that wet soil. And why is that? Because you can learn a lot by the animal life in that area. But also, if people know me, I have a background in doing research on Bigfoot, and that's where you also find the tracks. And I can remember the first time Angie found a Bigfoot track, she was stunned. Dave, get over here, look at this. Again, middle of nowhere, there's a Bigfoot track right in the sandbar. And there's somebody who, for decades in the woods, never saw anything. But you know what it is? You're not looking in the right places. You don't have that awareness up. And once that awareness comes up, you'll see things that you never believed were there. Now, before I get into the letters, I want to tell you a letter I got earlier this week. And it was the story I talked about, I think it was last time I did a missing person segment, where I said that we're in an area near where somebody disappeared, and I clapped real loud. And out of the woods came the sound of almost, you know, like a stampede. And somebody said, you know, Dave, Native American elders teach you that to release harmful spirits and energy, to clap real loud. And they thought that may have released some bad energy that was around us, especially since we're right near the Wind River Native American Reservation. I'd never heard that, but it makes a lot of sense. I appreciated that note. I passed it on to several people who are close to me. Now, yes, Starbucks. Starbucks, way up in northern Montana, 70 miles from the Canadian border. There is one there. We happen to be coming back from a location today, and I grabbed one. I know I was going to try to stay awake and do this video, but I rarely go to Starbucks up here. Now, if you're going to travel to northern Montana, Kalispell, Whitefish, and you're a coffee drinker, I'm not a huge coffee drinker, once a week maybe, but if you like coffee, Montana Coffee Roasters. Outstanding coffee. Wholesome, green, really, really good coffee. It's a local company. I like to support local companies. I'm not compensated in any way by them. I just love their coffee. So, anyhow, let's get on to the letters. Now, this first letter that I'm going to read to you, it's pretty deep. You got to be a thinker on this. And you've got to know something about what we talk about right here every week. The specifics that surround the missing person's story. We talk a lot about Yosemite. This person put a lot of the elements together in a letter that I'd read twice. So I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to break it down. We're going to go through it. Hey Dave, I worked as a hand solderer in the aerospace industry. I worked on many projects, mostly for big defense contractors. I do have a good working knowledge of electrical components, and I also am not blessed with an easy mind. I'm always thinking, I'm always studying, I'm always trying to understand. So, the reason they are telling you that your research is connected to Skinwalker Ranch is that the mechanism for both is roughly the same. That mechanism is a tunnel diode, which a tunnel diode causes electrons to travel through a quantum tunnel. That which what you call a portal is in reality a quantum tunnel. Tunnel diodes are used in UHF television tuners, oscilloscopes, and many other high-speed pulse wave applications. Quantum mechanics works great in the small scale, but when you scale it up, the math breaks down. Just like on the massive scale, relativity works great, but as you go smaller, then its math breaks down. What I'm trying to say is that I think these people walked into an energy gap, or a band gap, that was created by mineral deposits on two different types that come close to one another. One mineral deposit would have a negative charge, and the other a positive charge. Right away, I'm thinking two paragraphs ahead of what this guy's writing. I'm thinking, he's a good thinker. He's onto this. Now, if you're not enjoying what I'm telling you, then you maybe don't know the background of what we're dealing with. Yosemite, the biggest cluster of missing people in the world, is nothing but granite surrounding you when you're walking in that valley. The biggest mass of granite, one of the biggest in the world. Keep that in mind. So basically, the crust of the planet would have massive mineral deposits that happen to be located in such a way as to replicate a circuit board on a massive scale. You would have lakes that would act as huge capacitors storing energy. Very rarely does water have a neutral pH. It is usually alkaline or acidic, like a huge alkaline or acid battery. One of the elements used to create a tunnel diode is silicon. Granite is 72% silicon dioxide, a gate dielectric. So you would need to have two deposits, one acting as a positive semiconductor and the other a negative. So what am I saying is that Yosemite is one huge massive tunnel diode circuit with the lakes and rivers acting like wires, batteries, and capacitors. Now, right through the middle of Yosemite Valley is the Merced River. In the areas surrounding Yosemite Valley, there's hundreds of small lakes. Think about that. Remember what I've told you about areas that have massive amounts of small lakes? Lots of disappearances in those areas. On with the letter. Now at the scale, quantum mechanics starts to break down because the scale is just way too large, and relativity also breaks down because the scale is not large enough. So we are at the in-between of two very different philosophies. This is an area of mystery arguments and frustration among scientists for almost a century. There is an area of physics the government has been hiding from us. I could be wrong, but I believe this is where zero-point energy, which is real, comes into play. So at some point, between the rivers and the streams and the lakes, you have what is called a band gap or an energy gap. The area in between the valence band and the conductive band. Another way of putting it is similar to the spark gap on a spark plug in your engine. but instead of an electric spark, it's a spark of 0-point energy. So you have some hunter with a long steel highly conductive rod, the rifle. Or worse, you have a hiker with 2 aluminum trekking poles that wander into that band or energy gap. The metal rod of the firearm, or the metal trekking poles along with the human, which just by itself is enough to complete the circuit because humans are really a bag of highly conductive salt water, complete the circuit and cause a 0-point energy discharge. All their atoms get thrown into a quantum state and they travel through the quantum tunnel wormhole, aka portal. Now, depending on resonance frequency and potential, they could end up doing a bunch of different things. They could move forward in time. They could pop out, say at the other end of a granite deposit, mineral deposit, or downstream, or a river tens of miles away. They could reappear in Agartha, aka middle of Earth. They could end up on a different timeline or another dimension. With quantum entanglement, they could end up on a different planet, or in molten lava, or sealed chamber of a solid rock, or 1,000 feet above ground. It's pretty much a crapshoot. Tunnel diodes are notoriously unstable, and also wormholes are thought to be very unstable as well. But there are areas where this phenomena seems to be stable and used by extraterrestrials as a sort of highway. Think Skinwalker Ranch. Also, Mel's hole seems to be stable forms of this phenomenon. If scientists were ever able to study this and figure it out, they would figure out a unified theory, which would unlock the door to anti-gravity and unlimited energy. The Illuminati have been trying to keep this tech suppressed, so that is why the Park Service covers up these disappearances and ignores missing people. Well, anyway, I hope this answers some of your questions. Wow. Wow. Answers my questions. But I have 100 more questions on top of that. The conductive, the positive charges, the negative charges, the water, the granite. Fascinating stuff. And the weird thing is that there's nothing found of a lot of these people when they're around this granite, which is very strange. So, I'm sure I'll get a lot of letters about it, and that's good. Let's move up and on. Hey Dave, I support all that you do and want to say thank you for helping those who have experienced what many consider fantasy. That being said, let me get to my experience. This happened back in '99. My wife and I at the time were living in a place called Forest Falls, California. Small mountain town, about 3,000 residents. At the time I was working as a youth counselor down the mountain in a town called Redlands. I worked from 2 to 11 p.m. So I'd normally get home around midnight. This night wasn't any different. I arrived home, my wife was already in bed sleeping. I changed, threw a couple of logs on the fire, got ready for bed. Our cabin wasn't big. I could actually see the fireplace from my side of the bed, and as always left the door to the bedroom open to let the heat in. I just laid down to bed and I was watching the fire when suddenly I saw a 3-foot-tall thing step in front of the line of view of the fire. First thought I was seeing things, so I closed my eyes and opened them again and it was still there. I tried to sit up, but I was immobilized. I couldn't move or talk, but I could move my head. I turned towards my wife and she was sleeping. As I struggled, another being came through the right side of the wall, and another came through the left side of the wall, and they came towards the foot of the bed. I could now see them clearly. They were your typical gray beings of pale skin, very gaunt. One of them came to my side of the bed and noticed that he was a little smaller than the other two. He spoke to me and said, "Come with us." I referred to him as he because he perceived to be the male. And I heard him in my head. I responded and said that you do not have my permission to be here, and I have not invited you into my home. And he responded and said, "Come, we will show you the truth." And at the moment he put his hands over me, but not touching me, and I was instantly lifted off the bed and I began to float towards our big bedroom window. And I said, "No, you don't have permission to do this," and screamed, "Jesus rebukes you." Jesus is God, and only he is the truth. He responded and said, where is your Jesus now? We possess the truth. And I said, no, you are a liar, and repeated, Jesus is my Savior. And I kid you not, the more I repeated Jesus is my Savior, the more frustrated they became and released me several times back to my bed. I couldn't remember all those things if I said it and what they said, but this guy did. This will not be the last time you see us, they said. Just like that, they disappeared the same way they came in. Apparently, I was still suspended in air because I fell on the bed, which made a tremendous sound, and it shook the bed. Then my wife woke up startled and asked me what was going on. I explained what just happened to my wife, and she believed me, but warned me to not share this with anyone, and they would think I was effing nuts. But I truly don't give a rat's blank what anyone thinks. I have other stories to tell you which also occurred in the mountain, but I'll leave them for another time. God bless you. Now, the reason I read that story is because it's not uncommon. I've heard similar things probably 10 times in my life. From very, very credible people. And I would say 8 out of the 10 times I've heard them, they were all living in the mountains. But 2 were in the middle of the city, so I don't know. Thank you for the story. I've also heard people say, using God's name, Jesus' name, rebukes them and sends them away. Just reporting. Next story. Hey Dave, longtime listener, first-time contributor. I put off this email for a year or two for the primary reason being that it is tough to put it in writing. It relates to an instance that you have had a similar encounter to, along with a lot of fellow listeners, so you will know what I am trying to explain and put it in perspective for those who do not. I was in an area, but I was not hunting at the time, but I was in my boss's hunting farm. Fortunately, a coworker was along with the experience. Unfortunately, as it often goes, we have barely spoken of the incident. All my coworkers has said of the experience was, let's get out of here. Yeah, that was weird. 2 years later, I was scared most recently. We were on the edge of the power line closest to the Ohio River, 100 yards max, in Pulaski County on the north side of the river. I was in the late evening hours of August 2018. We had set out to trim some tree stands, both on quads. We stopped on the quads, got off maybe 20 yards from the stand. Immediately after turning off the quads, we noticed the silence. We were unable to hear any boats or noises from the river as it was nearby. The best I can describe the sound we did hear was if you could hear or imagine 1,000 raccoons running through the woods and through the tree branches simultaneously, or 100 monkeys swinging at full speed through the trees. We were both experiencing a sense of dread, but I continued to climb halfway up the ladder of the tree stand to do what we were there to do. As I was standing on the ladder, the noise seemingly was getting closer and closer, yet we could see nothing. I had the better perspective as I was 10 to 15 feet in the air and gazing straight into the canopy of the treetops. Dave, I saw nothing. No branches moving, not an animal, nothing. I was not aware of the Ohio predator sighting at the time. I will not speculate, but I'm writing this in for a reason. Through the help of you, I know damn well it was nothing I can't explain. The fellow I was with has not proclaimed to be scared of anything else over the 10 years we have known each other. I'm still not entirely pleased with how the story takes to paper in the email, but that is the way it happened. I just had to get this shared with you in the village. In my 25 years of being an avid outdoorsman, this is the only one I have no logical explanation for, even 4 years later. It was extremely loud. Nothing could be seen without speaking. We both felt the dread and the need to get out of there. Along a main riverbank hunting property, late evening hours. The question I always have on things like that, especially when there's 2 of you, would something have happened if there would have been only one of you? And he wasn't hunting then, meaning he didn't have a firearm, but he was at a hunting stand. Did hunting or the relationship of the hunting stand to hunting have something to do with it? Could it have been just a warning, that silence, to not hang out? Or was there something else in the area that was dangerous? Don't know. That area of the Ohio River, I actually know it pretty well. When Ben was going to Miami University, I used to land at the Cincinnati airport right next to the Ohio River almost. And I had a friend that was doing research on the south side of the Ohio River for a number of years. So, yeah, know that region. A lot of weird stuff goes on. Now, for the stories, got some really, really good ones for you. And they involve 3 different men. And you're going to see right away kind of what the underlying relationship is of all this. So, first case, California. And the man's name was Frank Stahl. He was 77 years old, living in Sacramento. And he went to an area right near Chico, California. And Frank was the former director for the California State Insurance Commission, a really prestigious job, somebody that was highly ethical. He retired and became a miner and invested in different mines throughout the state. Avid outdoorsman ever since he was a teenager. And he'd been to this one location many, many times. And that's what was called the Richardson Springs Hotel, just kind of north of Chico, up in the mountains. It's not called that anymore, but the location's still the same, and the location's still called Richardson Springs. And he went up there, and he'd been to this specific hotel and location dozens of times to go quail hunting. Now, if you have ever eaten a quail, you can buy quail in the store. They're super good eating. And he told people at the hotel that he was there to hunt some quail for his 2 sisters. And his truck was parked at the back of the hotel. The hotel was up in the mountains, and behind the hotel and all the way around the hotel, there were a lot of woods and a lot of birds. So in the morning, December 8th, 1947, other guests see him joyfully have breakfast, get up, walk out to his truck, grabbed his shotgun, headed into the woods. Absolutely nothing unusual. Well, that night, about 5 o'clock, starts to get dark. He's not showing up. Guests started to get worried, went out to his vehicle. Rifle, shotgun wasn't there. They knew he was gone. They searched the area. They got all of the hotel employees who weren't working to go up into the mountains in the dark, call his name. He didn't respond. That morning, they called the sheriff. Sheriff responds. Frank was a person of some notoriety at that time in California. And that caused a pretty intensive, comprehensive search. And right away, the first day, fog inundated the area and kept the planes from flying. Well, within days, they had well over 100 people on that mountain searching. Let me show you exactly where this is. So, Northern California. This is Chico. Chico State University is in the city. It's a great, great town, great state school. Get this road, go up into the mountains, and this was Richardson Springs. This is the hotel he was staying at. Now this is all uphill into big mountains. Keep that in mind, okay? So, 2-week search. Sheriff, equestrians, everything you can imagine. Sheriff said, well, he was 77 years old. He's not going to go that far. And there was no need to go far because there was a lot of game birds close to that hotel. But they searched 2 weeks. And for 1947, that's a long time. And even for, the 21st century, 2-week search, that's a long time. It's a lot of resources. They didn't find anything. They didn't find any tracks. They didn't find any evidence that he started a fire. Nothing. Now, fast forward about 6 months, May 8th, 1948. Some fishermen were at a location called Big Chico Creek, further up into the mountains. They find a body, completely naked, on the bank of the creek. They call the sheriff. They identify the body as Frank Stahl. The sheriff made many statements that Mr. Stahl had to have gone into the creek way up into the mountains. Their words, not mine. Because all of the clothes and shoes and socks were removed off the body. The sheriff said, well, they must have been washed off after going through that creek for miles. A couple problems, folks. Local reports for local consumption. Let's not raise any stink. I don't want any investigators coming into my county. I don't want anyone poking around. Well, some people talk that there might have been foul play. Well, I do think that there was something odd going on. Mr. Stahl was 77 years old. He hadn't brought a pack. He hadn't taken extra supplies. Mr. Stahl wasn't going to go way up into those mountains looking for birds. There's no way. There was no need. He would not have crossed the creek. It's insane to think those things. Now, again, here's the hotel where he was staying at. The road to get to Big Chico Creek is this way. You got to go back downhill and then go all the way around. His truck was at the hotel. From point to point is 6 miles. But he supposedly went into the creek miles above to get all of his clothes washed off. Stupidity. There's no way. Now, I've talked to you about this before. When somebody's clothes are removed, maybe it's because he had a hypothermia. But again, Frank had no reason to go way up into those mountains. He was 77 years old. He was going to go out, have a casual day hunting for quail around the hotel. You get it. Something else is at play. So, fits what I've written about many times. He's found uphill, in water, naked, missing clothes, missing shoes. Subplot is he was a hunter, weather-related events. No way. Next case, 42 years old, Edward Young, missing October 15th, 1947, Northern California. From where Frank Stahl disappeared, this is about a month and a half earlier and probably 400 miles north northwest from where Frank disappeared. So this was, I'm going to show you on a map, but it was an area in Northern California. Now, Edward Young had lived in an area called Whaleback Mountain for much of his life. And he knew Whaleback Mountain like you know your own backyard. That's what it was described by. They said he knew every foot of the mountain. Keep that in your mind. Well, on October 15th, 1947, okay, Frank Stahl's case, December 8th, 1947. Yeah, coincidence, eh? Same part of the state, eh? So, he was a resident of McDowell, California. He was an expectant father. He grew potatoes on his farm, but he was also a druggist in Doris, California. Now, he was hunting with a friend named Ola Green. They went deer hunting. And while they were on Whaleback Mountain, Ola said they got separated somehow. Now, Ola went back to the car, waited till the middle of the night for his buddy to come out. Edward didn't. Ola went down, got the sheriff, and they came back. That first night that Edward was missing, it snowed on the mountain. Now this is it's a pretty cool photo of Ed Young at 42 years old. They described him as being in perfect health, a mountain man per se, lived in the outdoors every waking moment he could when he wasn't working on his farm or working as a druggist. Nobody had any concerns about him living through this. So, first night it snows, second night and third night, heavy fog hit the area. 3 days after he disappeared, 200 men were on Whaleback Mountain. And that's a lot, folks, for 1947. Now let's talk about where Whaleback Mountain's at, okay? So, this is Northern California. This is the Pyramid Lake Paiute Reservation. This is the Nevada border. This is the Oregon border. McDowell was right here where he lived. And right over here, this is Lassen National Park. And this is the mountain where they were hunting. Got it? So I should preface, it's not 400 miles from Whaleback Mountain to where Frank Stahl disappeared. It's quite a bit less. And this is all happening on the eastern side of the state of California. So, Edward disappears. By October 20th, they have 600 searchers on that mountain. And they're searching 4 square miles. That's an enormous number. Imagine 600 people 5 feet apart, how much ground you could cover, marching all in a straight line. Huge. On October 30th, canines were brought in from Ventura, California, specially trained ones. Simultaneously, they posted a $500 reward for Ed. Well, those canines didn't find anything. They brought in a second set of canines. They didn't find anything. Grand total is 4 different canine teams had checked that mountain, and close to 1,000 people had walked all over it. Now, Ed was carrying a .300 Savage rifle, big gun. So he was a subclassification of a hunter. Multiple weather events, dogs, multiple bloodhound teams worked it. No tracks led to the body, no scent led to the body, and he was never found. How can that happen? Now, Whaleback Mountain, every direction goes downhill eventually in a mountain. That's the way it is on this one. And Edward had hunted this mountain so much that after you know an area really well, you know which direction is east, where the sun comes up, and west, where it comes down. And as long as you have those two coordinates down in your mind, you have a pretty good idea which way your car is at. And when he knew it, when he knew that area that well, the idea that he was lost made no sense to anybody on that search team. So then you start going through on your mind, what happened? Okay, as I've told you before, you can be on a mountain, off trail, break your leg, and you've got a communication device that people can hear for miles and miles. It's this 300 Savage rifle. Hunter training, hunter safety tells you that you fire that 3 times, and that means that a hunter is in distress. Nobody ever heard that Savage rifle go off that day, or any day after that. Now, Edward wasn't somebody like Frank. Ed was in the prime of his life, in super good health. Had a great job, great family. No telling what happened. It's one of those mysteries. Big mystery. So, next case, an Idaho case. I ask the audience to send in cases to me because it's very hard to cover all of the cases in a state over several hundred years. Many times a case in a rural area gets almost no publicity. And I've stated to you many times, I would say at least half the cases that you read about in the press are not true with the factual outlay of what happened. So as a researcher, you're really struggling to get good information from people. Now, let's talk about a new case in Idaho that is not in the Idaho book. And if it wasn't for somebody writing in and asking me about it, I never would have heard about it. Dr. Donald McGowan. He was a retired physician, and he was from Chicago. He lived in a city called Emmett, Idaho. Lifelong hunter. Dr. McGowan loved Idaho, loved the outdoors, which is why he moved there from Chicago. He had a practice in Chicago, retired there, came out to Emmett and had a small practice. But every year he went out to hunt. He was hunting an area called Round Valley. And the search was focused on an area named Smith Valley. Well, he went out on November 10th, 1952. At 83 years old. Stop right there. 83 years old. How far can somebody 83 years old walk in the mountains? Rugged mountains. Think about it. Obviously not as long as Edward Young at 42 years old. A normal 42-year-old could walk a normal 83-year-old into the ground. But Donald McGowan didn't come home. His friends called the sheriff. The sheriff responded. The first day after he disappeared, he was big in the community. 200 searchers showed up looking for the good doctor. Now, here's a map. This is Boise right here. Boise. The search zone. Round Valley. Water, water. Rough area. Now, the search was also focused on an area called Smith's Ferry. It's near where his car was parked. So 200 searchers just combed that area the first day. Nothing. His friend said that Mr. Young knew that area like he owned it. He had hunted it for a dozen years, 2 dozen years. He knew it with his eyes closed, some people said. Well, what happened is that bloodhounds were brought in from Hamilton, Montana. And then an Air Force sent a team of German-trained canines in. So 2 different set of canines this time. And what they found, I've only heard being found one other time. They were going along a dirt part of the search, and they found an arrow drawn in the dirt with a point on it, with the initials drawn in the dirt, MCG, McGowan. Searchers knew right away that he knew he was lost, and he was trying to direct the searchers to where he'd be, where he was going. This is a good learning moment. When you're lost, stay in one place. Don't walk around. Why is that important? Well, Mr. McGowan would have been found. Searchers were looking for him. Many times people that are missing will walk in circles. Now that isn't what was said here, but oftentimes that's what happens. This incident happened about 40 miles north of Boise. So it snowed on November 13th and November 11th, the day after he disappeared and 3 days later. Now, 2 days after he disappeared, following that track the arrow showed, they found a 1-day-old campfire. They knew they were on him. The optimism was running super high. They said, oh, there's no doubt we'll find this guy. So they're yelling, dogs are on it. So 2 days later, they're still tracking, and they find a campfire, and flames are still burning, just barely, on the fire. That's weird, huh? They're calling his name. They're not finding anything. They're looking around. They're not finding anything. Grand total 17 days was committed to searching for Dr. McGowan. That's an enormous search for 1952. The numbers I've given you on these searches are so far outside the bounds of a normal search, 3 to 5 days for that time. A lot of committed searchers. But they brought in a military dog and private dogs. And they tracked him for a while, and then all of a sudden everything went dry. Why? How? So he disappeared on November 10th, 1952. July 26th, 1953, almost 8 months later. Snow was gone. Things were dry. Bring in cadaver dogs, look for a body. Well, they brought in 32 searchers, same area. They went back to that area where they saw that last campfire. They spent 2 days shoulder to shoulder looking through the area. Found nothing. Nothing. How can that be? How can that be when they found a fire with flame? Dr. McGowan did a lot right. Biggest thing he did wrong was not staying in one place. He had matches so he could keep warm. In hindsight, that first night that he went missing, find a location. If you could get there quickly within half an hour, high point, start a fire and keep that fire going. After it's going good, put a lot of wet stuff on it so it smokes real good. That'll be the indicator fire for searchers. And then just stay there, stay warm, you'll live, you'll be found. It's a mistake to keep moving. But if he knew this area as well as everybody said he did, then why didn't he just walk out? How could he be lost? doesn't make any sense. He knew he was lost, which was confusing in and of itself. But then you go back and you remember the stories I've told you about other hunters that they're walking along and all of a sudden they're in an area that they don't even recognize. Is that what happened to Dr. McGowan? I don't know. But folks, there's 3 cases of 3 people that disappeared and were not found. One person eventually found naked. What? I've never heard of a case, this is the first, where they found a fire and there were still small flames and that person wasn't found. This is the first. I'm sure there's others out there. All of these cases, when I'm done researching them, I go to bed at night and they run around in my mind. And I don't have nightmares and I don't envision people, but the facts are all so confusing and all so bizarre as to think that how these people are not found is not rational. And this is never an indictment of the search and rescue, folks. To think that they're not doing a great job is ridiculous. Now, I get a lot of people over the years that have asked me about joining a search and rescue team. And they need members. Most jurisdictions need members. Most search and rescue people are older. Very few are in their 20s and 30s. It's because people are doing recreational things, don't think this is interesting to them, working 30, 40, 50 hours a week. Most of the time it's older people. But if you're in good health and you like helping people and you're willing to sacrifice time from work when they call, please look into joining a search and rescue team. You'll be held accountable for getting certifications. You'll be having to take classes and go to schools on your own time. But in the end, you're really doing something for society. You're really doing something good. Be something to be proud of. And each time I read a case where somebody's been found by a search and rescue person, a search and rescue person will have that memory for a lifetime of saving a life. Huge. So, covered a lot of ground in this video. That beginning section where I talked to you about personal locator beacons, I wish I could replay that in every video I've ever made, because I know people don't watch every video, but that is one of the important things that I wish people would just carry with them. The personal locator beacon. Now, I made a video, if you go back and you look, I've made 2 in the last couple of years about trail equipment, what to carry in your backpack. And there's a lot of good advice in there. And it was accompanied by years of research from many great outdoorsmen. And I can't take credit for all of it, but then we talk about some things that you probably wouldn't think about carrying in the backpack. So you'll enjoy it. Many of you have written to me in the last couple months about being unsubscribed. Hundreds. And you get frustrated because when you're unsubscribed, you can't find the channel again. And that's because your YouTube doesn't want you to find it. It's the only thing I can think of. But remember, my website for missing people, CanAm Missing, C-A-N as in Nora, A-M as in Mary, CanAmMissing.com. That's the website. You always find the website, you can find YouTube, because YouTube's the same name, CanAm Missing Project. Do not buy my books online other than through us. If you're buying, I was just online the other day and I was looking for a book, and my books came up on Amazon, $149 a piece. What an absolute ripoff. Resellers are charging $24.99 on our site, $149 online. Frustrating. And every once in a while I do hear about somebody who did not know about our site and purchased from a reseller. What I'd recommend is go back and leave the reseller a ripping review for ripping you off. They should be held accountable for that behavior. Anyhow, thanks for being here. I greatly appreciate you. I try to do something good for the world every day. I try. And by pushing this message out there to you about the realities of the outdoors and how very smart people can disappear and not ever be found, you have to think about that. Why is this happening? Is there something special about them? Is there something special about the environment? Good questions. So, hopefully I'll see you soon. Please repost this on your social media. I'd be greatly appreciated. Stay safe out there. And love your family. Take care of your friends. And do something for somebody today in the world that's polite and nice. Thanks for being here. Paulides out.